What's up, Data Transformers? This is Bolaji, and welcome to Data Career Transformations, the show where we watch analytics engineers, data analysts, and data scientists transform their careers today. We're talking to a data leader who builds tools that make data engineering delightful. You don't hear that every day. And they build teams that actually want to work and grow together. You don't hear that every day. Together with other DBT Labs engineers, Grace Goheen and Dave Connors, they created DBT Meshify, a CLI tool that programmatically manages model versions, model contracts, groups, and access controls. But here's what you don't know about them, though. They're a radically transparent, creative collaborator with a distinct growth mindset, which I love. They don't believe greatness can be planned. Wait, hold up. A data professional who's not a planner? We're gonna get to the bottom of that. And they've performed at international festivals from Saint-Tropez to Italy to back home at New York's Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. They've also been skydiving. Oh, we gotta talk about that one. There is nothing small or chill about this person we're about to speak to, and yet, when they retire, they want to open a small and chill coffee shop. Really though? Really? We're gonna get to the bottom of that story, please. Help me welcome the Analytics Engineering Manager of Enterprise Data Platform at Hubspot, Nicholas Yager. What up, Nicholas?
Hello, how's it going?
It is going phenomenally well. I am beyond excited to finally get you onto the show. Welcome, my friend. Thank you for making time.
I'm super happy to be here.
So you had the opportunity to work at DBT Labs. You worked with some of my favorite people at the company, including Grace Goheen, Dave Connors. Tell us a little bit about DBT Meshify and some of your fond memories of working with the team.
Absolutely. So, it's really funny to think about joining DBT Labs and wanting to work there as an analytics engineering manager. When I first saw there was a role way back when, in I want to say 2022, 2023, I was thinking about the people whom I looked up to at the time for analytics engineering. Who was I treating as a leader or as an inspiration? And I was thinking of people like Dave Connors. And when I saw there was this nice opportunity, I'm like, sure, whatever, like I'll give it a go. At that time, I was an analytics engineering leader at a company called Torch Leadership Labs, and I gave it a go. And what do you know? But I get the gig. I have the job, and I was able to
shoot your shot, Nicholas.
Right, I was able to work with these really fine folks. And one of the things that inspired me through that whole process was this notion of moving up the stack. Make tools, make processes, change the system so that way you're not working on the same thing every day. You're moving a layer up in this like layer of abstractions. So when Dave and Grace reached out to me and said, hey, let's make it really easy for people to use versions, to use contracts, to have cross-project references, I was sold immediately. We can completely remove the need for that whole class of problems.
It's exciting. It's not every day either that somebody walks into an organization and gets to work on something so tangible, something that even has a legacy after they've left the company. That must have been a thrill for you.
Oh, certainly. I'm going to be very honest and say, when I joined the company, I was a fanatic, if you will, of the tool. I love DBT Core. We use cloud at my previous role. And at this sort of juncture, it was this cool idea of like, cool, I can both further my practice as an engineer, as an analytics engineer. I can also work with the fantastic core developers who are building out the software, and I'll learn all these fantastic things and build awesome solutions for folks that'll go beyond what we're currently doing, what the current state is. So it was really awesome.
This is great. This is great. Nicholas, you've worked at DBT Labs. You're now at HubSpot, two really prominent brands. So we'll want to go deep into some of the work you did there and how you got those jobs. But before we go there, we got to go back to the beginning. We got to get into the origin story, Nicholas. Everybody knows I'm a big comic book nerd, and you have one of the more fascinating origin stories. Biochemistry at the State of New York College. How in the world does that end up in data? How?
It was a simple lab accident with a radioactive spider.
I knew it! I knew I recognized you.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. I'm actually Peter Parker. No, it's actually kind of an interesting long arc of starting to learn and understand biochemistry, starting to realize, wet work, actual lab work is tedious. Why not simulate? Why not use data? Why not use computers for this? And over time, developing of skills around writing software, analyzing data, kept snowballing into different opportunities that had nothing to do with biochemistry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Going from this degree in biochem into working for a genomics company, into working for a hospitality company as a data engineer, and then boom, I was exposed to like the first real instance of needing to use data to solve actual problems that weren't, academic or theoretical, and I fell in love.
Wow. This is so interesting. I mean, you've studied so many interesting things along the way. Some of the technologies that you encountered on your journey are starting to become familiar to me as I'm having more of these conversations. So as you were mastering biostatistical methods, you became fluent in R and in SAS.
Yeah.
Did those lend themselves, as you started to move in deeper into data engineering, into allowing you to learn different programs or frameworks or principles?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly, I'm going to make my old professor, Dr. Greg Hartwigson, perhaps have a tear of joy. During a lot of my coursework and a lot of my studies, we were doing tremendous amounts of research using R, which for people who don't know is a programming language for working with data, performing statistical analyses, making beautiful figures and diagrams. And the principles that I learned during that process of how to run statistical tests, how to actually process and manage large amounts of data, readily transferred in industry when it comes to understanding how analysts actually work with data. We can't just give people, a terabyte file and say, cool, you sort it out. No, like you gotta actually have different enablement mechanisms to make it easier for folks.
Yeah. This is great. And we joked about sort of the superhero transformation, a couple of minutes ago, but honestly, I'm fascinated with almost this metamorphosis that happens with people, data professionals in particular, as they start to master the technical skills first. In your case, you're learning R, you're learning biostatistics, but at some point, you learned how to navigate these different job opportunities. Let me even say it that way. There's probably other people in your lab that were as good as you at R, as good as you at biostatistics, and yet they didn't necessarily navigate the maze. How did you start to build the skills to say, I'm going to take what I have and leverage it into this next bigger opportunity?
Oh, unearned confidence. 100% unearned confidence. No, if I'm going to be serious, though, if I'm going to be even slightly serious, I think it's a matter of letting professional curiosity lead you. So for me, taking the moment to like introspect and say, hey, I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying writing software. I'm enjoying analyzing data.
Yes.
What would it mean to spend 6 months, a year focusing on that and following my curiosity about where this can go? And then being willing to do it. No, I'm going to couch all of that by saying, like, there's a certain amount of privilege that has to be in place for that to work. There has to be a little bit of confidence in place for that to work. But having that sense of self-trust to follow that professional curiosity, I think was what allowed me to go on a very interesting search through a maze, as you put it. Yeah.
Yes. I was looking at your blog, folks. Nicholas blogs at nicholasyager.com. Really enjoyed working through some of your writing rather. But you talked about a book called The Myth of the Objective. I'd never heard of it before, but it's a fascinating concept. Again, it seems non-intuitive for data professionals. So could you unpack that concept? What is the myth of the objective? How might it be relevant to us trying to find our way from point A to this really big job title that we ultimately would love to get?
Yeah. So the myth of the objective is the idea that we as individuals or as groups can just say, hey, my goal is X, some lofty end state that's going to be perfect.
Yes.
And that we can then just like walk in that direction and we'll get there.
Yes, you can, Nicholas.
No, you can't. In the real world, there are things called roads and cars and buildings and trees and lakes, right? There's oceans in the way. We have to navigate and observe and course correct to get to where we want to go. And that's how it works in reality, right? For traversing the world. That's how it works. Yes. Traversing careers and exploring problems and really coming to build cool stuff.
Wow.
This should be really common for folks who follow the startup scene. Like most of the successful unicorn companies that exist did not start in their current form.
Wow.
If I remember correctly, this might be wrong, but if I remember correctly, Instagram was originally like a location sharing app, right?
Yes.
Like Foursquare, sort of.
That's right.
It obviously doesn't do that now. HubSpot is wildly different than where they started 16 years ago, where they started as this inbound marketing company, and now they are a CRM platform leader, right? These are completely different things. And of course, I'm going to preach to the choir here, Bolaji. DBT Labs did not start as a SaaS company, right?
Fishtown.
Oh, yeah. And doing consulting, right? So
yes, we
can't assume that we can just like say, this is the goal and I'm going to work towards that one direction of the goal. No, we have to course correct. So that fantastic book, The Myth of the Objective, Why Greatness Cannot Be Planned, really dives into how this impacts both career trajectories as well as the software and tools that we build. If you build a robot, you have to build a robot so it can navigate mazes and not just go in a direction. It's true for everything.
That really resonates with me, Nicholas. It resonates like in real life. You can't traverse the way as the crow flies, even though that would be the shortest and quickest path. So that resonates, but there seems to be a contradiction. You categorize yourself as a creative collaborator. Again, I really, really love that. I've seen some of your presentations from Coalesce and from other forums. You do really appear to be a creative collaborator, but data seems to be about structure. We like order. Nicholas, you are disordering things. Stop it.
Well, not stop it. Whimsy is important in the world, right?
Yes.
I think it's a really interesting observation that we as data folks want to have clean data sets. We want to have readable code. We want to present a proxy for reality, right? For data analysts, for people that want to understand their business or their government or what have you, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that the world is perfect. Human beings, I think, are perfect in their own way, but we're also messy, and that's fun, and it's really interesting to explore. And I think there's nothing that says that we, as messy creatures that are each in our own way unique and perfect, can't have really well-determined data sets. And I think you'll find, for anyone who's watching this, I think you'll find some amount of resonance here where even if we think our data are perfect, even if we think we have the ideal data set that completely encompasses an idea, I'm gonna come up with one that's, a myth, right? The perfect customer. Oh, we have our customer's data set because we know what a customer means. No one knows what a customer means. You're gonna iterate on it. You're gonna have to change it. You're gonna have to fix it. It's not perfect. It's never perfect. So just embracing that idea that we're going to iterate, we're going to change what we're doing every time, it's gonna make your life a lot easier. Nothing's ever set in stone.
Wow. I gotta let that breathe for a minute, folks. I gotta let that breathe because it feels like it really makes sense in theory and logically. In practice, I can see how at times this might be difficult. I mean, even that very assertion that my data set is not, but don't go talking about my data set, Nicholas Yager. My data set is beautiful.
It's not perfect. I'm sorry, it's not perfect. It'll solid B+, maybe even A-. It's not perfect though.
My baby is not ugly, Nicholas Yager. Talking about my data set. But this is interesting though. Nicholas, I love to ask the sort of the Hogwarts question with the sorting hat for everyone who sits in this chair in terms of how you were able to match your personality to a lane in the data world. Analyst, engineer, analytics engineer, or even data scientist. You came from the science world, for crying out loud. Why are you not a data scientist?
So my secret is I've done all of these roles. And I'm also going to say I don't think I've landed on one, but if I'm going to follow this sorting hat metaphor, if you will.
Yes.
I would propose, and by all means shoot me down on this, but I would propose that It all comes down to like motivations. So
Okay.
I think for data engineers, analytics engineers, and data scientists, I think that there's this really strong motivating factor of building something. I want to create
Okay.
something. I want to build something. But the things that we're all building are slightly different variations of a theme. Where in my opinion, engineers, no, let's go with data engineers. Data engineers, they're really building out a representation of things that have been observed. Like I'm
Okay.
going to collect samples. I'm going to collect
Yes.
data. I'm going to put it all into a spot. And, if they're a really motivated engineer, it's going to be perfect. It's going to be their perfect little baby. It's going to be wrong, but it's going to be
Yes.
their perfect little baby, right? And then
Yes.
there are analytics engineers who have a little bit more context for their business or their organization, and they want to build something, right? They typically, if we kind of delve headfirst in philosophy, they're
Yes.
building a construct of reality. Is it reality? No. But like they're going to present to you a reality of the business. Here are our customers. Here are our contracts. Here is X, Y, and Z that's important to the business. And if you go to like Kimball or what have you about data engineering and analytics engineering, this is what they're talking about by having data sets that encompass a business process. But they're building a representation of reality.
Yes.
And then you get into the applications of that reality, right?
Okay.
So I'm going to go into data science next, where data scientists, they're still building things. They're building out models.
Yes.
They're building out different ways of leveraging that data to understand the nature of that constructed reality. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not. But like a data scientist would be the person who's trying to find the gravitational constant, like of the universe. They're trying to understand what the long-term value of your customers are and predict it over time based on some other predictive characteristics. And then there are analysts who are trying to accurately report on the business, to accurately represent what's actually happening right now, as opposed to creating systems that predict the future. Everyone's building something, but everyone's working on some spectrum of ground truth, observed truth, constructed reality that may or may not actually be true, because once again, nothing's ever perfect, or a forecast of the future based on understanding.
Wow. That's wild. This got deep really quick. Like, woo!
Did you ever
This is
meet
good.
Winnie? Did you ever meet Winnie? From DBT Labs, fantastic community member, fantastic.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
she
Of
did
course.
this really great Coalesce presentation in, I want to say 2021, I think, which was
Yes.
about how analytics engineers are storytellers, how we are crafting a narrative about how the world works. And it's from that narrative, from that world building, that we are all able to have an understanding about our business, our government, or organization.
Yeah.
It's a really great bit of whimsical philosophy to get folks into that sort of philosophical mood.
I really love that. And for folks who are trying to figure out what Hogwarts house they fit in, this is a fascinating way to think about it. It's a fascinating construct. I'm always interested in, so I'd love to sort of paint this picture now, if we sort of get a bit more concrete.
Yeah.
In your current position at HubSpot, I'd love to paint the picture of how your team is structured, what types of projects you guys are trying to build, and maybe what the interplay is between the different players on the team, engineers, analysts, and so on. So what does the team look like right now that you're heading up?
Yeah, so my team currently is a mix of career level analytics engineers, folks with some serious technical chops, and some folks who are, let's say, in the mid stages of the career, people who are very competent, talented engineers who are learning advanced techniques and really learning how to shine.
Nice, nice. And so you are squarely on the engineering side of things. It seems like a lot of your work experience has been there. Who would you say are your stakeholders then?
Yeah. So as the manager for the enterprise data platform team, we serve like a central function for a number of different analytics engineering teams and other analyst teams. So when we think about these central ideas for a business that are core to everybody, who is a customer?
Yeah,
Right?
that's a big question.
Those tend to fall on our team. So we were able to create this shared sense of truth for all of the other analytics engineering disciplines and domains in the organization, and also extend that narrative, that reality into all the various analysts that exist at HubSpot. And for what it's worth, this is a large enterprise.
Yes.
Within our data ecosystem, let's call it, analytics engineers alone, we're somewhere around 80 to 90 analytics engineers. There are hundreds and hundreds of analysts. There are dozens of data scientists. It's a very large group of people that are all trying to collaborate and coordinate and create a sense of understanding for the company.
That's incredible. It seems like even before you got to HubSpot, Nicholas, you were working with things at scale. So much so that some of your presentations, your talks were about scale. You talked about a couple of years ago, for example, scaling your DBT product like a gardener, trying to go from overgrown to thriving. What are some of the unique challenges that your team is faced with as you deal with these massive, massive terabytes of information and pipelines and models?
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of goes back to what you said towards the beginning, Bolaji, around human beings are kind of messy and nothing's perfect, right? I think it was Jeremy Cohen who once said that analytics engineering projects are entropic. They accrete information. There will always be more questions about the nature of the business, the nature of the reality of your org, and models will just start to grow. You'll have more and more and more. And that's a normal human being thing. I think human beings just love to add stuff. Have you ever like started off an email and it was like, I'm going to write like a one paragraph email or like a 2-sentence Slack message. And then, you think about it for like 15 minutes and now it's like 3 paragraphs long and there's like a boatload of
Get out of my
emoji.
inbox, Nicholas.
No, I'm not going to. It's the exact same idea.
Don't look at me.
So big companies, when you have multiple teams and tons of AEs and tons of analysts, they can all be working very effectively within their particular domains.
Yes.
But also create sprawl.
It makes sense. Wow.
Yeah. So, like an overgrowing gardener, you need to start weeding stuff. Do you have a garden? Do you grow plants?
I don't have a green thumb, unfortunately. My mom does. And so I've always had an appreciation for gardeners. And particularly as a marketer, I've always been into storytelling, into philosophy, right? So I really love some of the frameworks that you've been sharing. And I very much value the approach that gardeners take.
Oh, tell me more.
So I remember giving a talk once that talked about prehistoric man and how there were hunter-gatherers and there were, at a certain point, tribes only hunted and ate what they killed that day for food. But the tribes couldn't grow very large because they had to travel quite a bit to find the animals to hunt and so on. At a certain point, they figured out, I'd rather just stay in one place, eat these little berries over here, start to plant some of them. And that actually became a foundation for civilization because they could stay in one place, grow larger families, sustain themselves a lot more easily, all based off of the ethos of being gardeners. So I really value the skills that gardeners bring to bear. I've never thought of gardening applied to data work.
Well, first I want to say congrats. We were able to bring anthropology into this too.
Yes.
We're going to get the whole bingo card. It's going to be perfect. Right. I like to think of folks building things as a natural process. No, maybe not like architects building a building. People tend to not for the most part, people tend to not just keep adding additions onto a building, although you never know. Sometimes that's the case. But with software, it's really easy to add stuff. You could just
makes sense.
Add more code, add more tests, add more models, keep going, right? If you're into American car culture, you can always just add one more lane to the road. It's fine. Like, you can just add more. But it takes a keen eye and a deft hand to know, hey, let's actually pump the brakes a little bit. Let's actually review what we have here and start to remove things we don't need.
Wow.
And this is not uncommon for software folks, right? Like, there's always the desire to clean up tech debt. There's always a desire to make things refactored and more efficient, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why data has to be any different. In fact, the more people you have, I would argue, the greater the likelihood will be that you'll need these gardeners, these stewards, to keep track of the overarching structure of your projects, to make sure everything's running efficiently and that you're not growing out of control.
Oh, this is really good insight. Not everybody has had the opportunity yet to work at that scale of organization and with that scale of data sets. But it feels like these habits should be built early before you get to the HubSpot level of enterprise data.
Yeah, I would certainly hope so. We're closer to 5 figures than we are 4 figures in terms of DBT models. There are hundreds of terabytes of data. Hopefully your team, when you're at like 5 people, you're able to like look at your little data estate. Having been at a company with like 5 data folks and like 100 DBT models, you could take a moment and survey the estate and understand what there is and start to figure out what you need and don't need. I mean, I think it's very Murray Kondo, right? Of like, this model doesn't bring me joy.
Oh, that's another bingo card check mark.
Yeah, there we go.
You're in. I'm curious, to the extent that you can share, Nicholas, about your tech stack currently. What sorts of technologies are you working with?
Yeah, I like to joke and say the answer to that is yes. What tech are you working with? Yes, we're using everything. Having that been said, our primary stack is a combination of S3 and internal built ingestion tools for loading stuff into Snowflake for our primary data warehousing solution. We use some Airflow tasks for various parts of our pipelines. We use DBT and DBT Cloud for a lot of what we're using. I should say DBT Core and DBT Cloud for a lot of our primary analytics engineering work. And then from there, it is a potpourri of different approaches and ideas, right? So we have various BI tools, both internal and SaaS, various AI tools that we've been building over time to start to operationalize the data that we have available. The sky's the limit. You imagine the tool. Odds are there's a team of folks here that are using it.
I love that. Fascinating. I'm curious as to how, if we go a little bit, we sort of time travel back in your journey.
Yeah.
Where DBT first entered the chat. When did you first start to experience problems where you said, I need a solution, and DBT ended up answering or solving that problem?
Yeah, so we're going way back. Back in late 2018, so Fishtown Analytics days.
Wow.
Yep, going way back. I was working for a startup called Torch Leadership Labs. I'm going to do a little shout out for them real quick. They're a leadership coaching platform. They exist to help match people with mentors and coaches to help them grow as professionals. And at that time, I was a year into my role there as a founding engineer. So I was working off of folding plastic tables, trying to help get that wild rocket ship off the ground. And by the time that sort of time came to pass, I was starting to found a data practice there. Imagine working for a company and no one knows, like, hey, how's our CS org working? How's matching working? How many customers do we have? It's a meme, but it's real, right? I was looking for ways for starting to make that work out. I started off, messing around with notebooks and Airflow, and after like a month, I realized like, hey, actually there is a better way. There's this thing called DBT, and at the time there was no DBT Cloud. At the time, it was all DBT Core, and I got cracking and getting things set up and starting to model how the business operates and how all the data relates, and then from there was able to start empowering folks in our CS org and our product org and beyond with data to actually do their job well. Given the fact that I work for DBT Labs, it'll be no surprise to folks to say that I fell in love. I became a fan. There's a joke that Gillian Corkin used to say that at a certain point companies become a cult if they're successful. And like, if we believe that for a moment, I'm not implying that there is. This is a joke, a personal opinion. I would have joined that call at that moment because I fell in love with like DBT Core 0.4, I think. We're talking super way back.
Early.
Yeah.
Super early. Phenomenal. And it's sort of walked alongside you in your career as you've gone from adventure to adventure, it sounds like.
Yeah. It's a toolkit that I really enjoy working with. I also enjoy tinkering with it, right? So DBT Core as a product is open source. People can help contribute fixes, Yes. 2019, I find a defect. I'm like, hey, friends, there's something going on here. Also, here's a pull request. So it can all get better, right?
Awesome. Awesome. Man, that's exciting. That's really, really cool. I had the opportunity to work at an open source company many years ago, Red Hat.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
yeah, there's very similar energy behind, massive community, very enthusiastic members. And that ability to contribute to the growth of the product is something that people just really enjoyed. So I resonate with that. Having said that, Nicholas, thus far you are sounding like a comic book superhero, so we're gonna have to show them the other side of things. I love to hear people's data disaster stories, not because I'm a masochist, but rather, I think we learn more from our failures and from our struggles. For example, I had the chance to coach one of my kids in soccer when he was younger. And, when you win, everybody's happy, but nobody really is introspective or reflects on what we did. But when things go wrong, boy, does everybody have an opinion. Do you recall some stories, some data disasters that you're able to talk about?
Yeah. I'm gonna say I have a couple data disasters, but
Yes.
feel like there's like a little bit of a through line here because in the spirit of humility,
Yes.
I'm gonna say a data disaster that wasn't impacting anyone except for me in an interview. I think is a safe data disaster.
Gotcha.
At one point I had interviewed for a very large grocery delivery company. Let's put it that way, for an
Okay.
analytics engineering role.
Okay.
They were a DBT shop.
Mhm.
Lots of large org, lots of data.
Mm.
And I'm getting towards the end of the interview process, doing all sorts of good stuff, and I get stumped.
Yeah.
I get totally stumped by a question
Oof.
that is the most embarrassing thing
Oof.
in the entire world. Are you ready for my embarrassing thing?
Mhm.
I forgot how to update a table with rows of data. Like, to just say, like, I'm going to insert this record into this table. My brain was just so in like, no, everything's a pipeline. Everything's a model. We're just going to have data flow from one end to the other. Why would we ever update a table? Why would we insert anything? And it was embarrassing and I totally bombed it. I did not get a job offer. I was
Man.
very quickly dismissed by their CTO. And it's like, okay, cool. No, that's fine. I deserve that. I forgot how basic databases work. Never mind. We're good.
My gosh. That's tough. That's tough. Man, we all have, I know everybody's like anxious right now because we've all been through those nightmare interviews. I'm not sure which is worse, getting a question that, like a really tough question, you have no idea what the answer is, or getting a question that like I should know this, and your brain is just like mush. At that point, I think your scenario might have been worse because you're like, I know this. It's just not
It's like, well,
the
this isn't gonna work out. I know it's in there somewhere, but it ain't coming.
The math ain't mathin'. That's tough, man. What's like a really tough interview question that you can recall getting before?
Yeah. I think there's like tough in the tricky, sort of underhanded way, or tough in the sense of like personal silliness.
Gotcha.
But I also think there are really tough questions in an interesting way,
Huh.
where I both love and hate interview questions that have to do with like system design. How would you build a system? How would you get something
Okay.
to do X, Y, or Z?
Okay.
And the reason why those are a little tough in my mind is it's like, okay, cool. I'm going to come up with a way of solving a problem
Mm.
based on, my best effort. And from there on out, who knows if it's good? Maybe I'm using technologies that the interviewer is familiar with. Maybe I'm not. There are probably more efficient ways of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm planning out a real system diagram for like how APIs work together or how we're going to have data flow through models, I usually get to sit down and drink some nice coffee and whiteboard it and understand how the system's going to work. If I'm under the gun, it's like, you have to build this now. I'm like, this is going to be wrong. But here's a best effort. I don't know why you're testing me on this. This is a bad interview question.
Oh my gosh. No, that's really good though. I mean, it sounds like one of those questions where you simply cannot get the right answer. Maybe there isn't a right answer, and maybe they're more evaluating your thought process, your ability to work under pressure, which might not be totally fair. But yeah, that is a tough one though. When that's like, what is the meaning of life? Like, can I call a friend? Yeah.
Hey, just let me work on that problem for like the next 60 years and I'll come
60
back to
years.
you on my deathbed. It's fine.
Crazy. Yeah, that's tough. This is helpful. I wonder, Nicholas, and I do want to share with the folks who are watching or listening. Nicholas shares on their blog a little bit about their personality. You've done some of these personality tests before, if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken. Some of your personality traits do include extroversion, I think, and maybe people can observe that in this conversation, which is totally
Are you
fun.
cold reading me right now? Are you like are you just like observing who I am and you're going to do like mentalist things now?
I'm reading the lines on your palm.
Amazing.
And I find this really intriguing, Nicholas. You've described a couple of situations that were particularly stressful. I'm always interested in how data professionals handle that stress because we're faced with maybe unreasonable demands from the business, time sensitive demands, or maybe we're in charge of a critical system that is just broken. How do you handle these stressful situations? How do you coach your team to handle these stressful situations?
Yeah. It's always a tough one, right? Because I know for me, I am the sort of person who will immediately attach to a cool problem. You show me a puzzle, like you could I'm gonna come over to your house, okay? And we're gonna have dinner, but before then, just set like a puzzle on your table.
That's
And
hilarious.
45 minutes in, I'm gonna be like surreptitiously putting pieces on your puzzle, and I'll feel bad if it breaks, right?
Oh my gosh.
So I know for me, like I used to have a lot of challenges with burnout and stress, and like really wanting to excel.
Mm.
And the only way that I've been able to sort of work through that and work beyond that, I'll give myself like a C plus, B minus, is through a combination of two things. One is maintaining perspective.
Yeah.
I love working for HubSpot. HubSpot's a really cool company to work for. We're a CRM platform company. We're not doctors. We're not pilots. Yeah. None of us are tasked with the lives or deaths of individuals on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, a model is broken. We have some bad financial data. We don't have bad financial data. This is an example. But let's imagine that we have some bad financial data. We're going to fix it. We're going to come up with a plan. We're going to sit down. We're going to assess what's going on, and we're going to fix it. I'm not going to stress about it right now. We're going to work on this as a group. It's everyone's responsibility. None of us are flying a plane. We're not going to have people get injured or hurt because some numbers are a little bit wrong here.
Right.
So that's thing number one. And then thing number two is I really want to talk about like stressful deadlines, right? Most deadlines are lies. I'm sorry. Most deadlines are lies. I think that they're really good estimates maybe. Maybe they're tied to something important, but it's just a date that someone picked. And maybe for a good reason and maybe for a bad reason, right? So if we're open and honest and willing to say like, "Hey, yep, something is broken. I totally understand that it's important that gets fixed by X date in a week." Amazing. Being able to say, "Hey, it's not going to happen by then. I can do these three things and that'll move the needle. I cannot do those few things and it'll move the needle in this way." And just acknowledge that, nope, basically all deadlines are a negotiation. And if you either have confidence in your own estimates or you have someone who is able to vouch for you and to really be in your corner, then you can start to have that conversation and say like, "Hey, actually this isn't going to work. Like we can do other stuff. We'll find a way to make it work enough that we can then iterate thereafter to get to a more reasonable solution."
Oh my gosh. That most deadlines are lies. That definitely feels like a mic drop situation. You went on to elaborate all deadlines are a negotiation. That is a total paradigm shift. It reminds me of one of my favorite business authors. He's a marketing author. His name is Seth Godin. And several years ago, he published a book titled All Marketers Are Liars, right? And he's trying to sell this to marketers, right? So obviously it caught a lot of attention, but then there was backlash. It was very controversial. Lots of people wrote up about it on blog posts and in newspapers and such. I mean, he elaborates in the book what he's actually talking about. He ends up, well, this is probably his publishers. They end up changing the title of the book to All Marketers Are Storytellers because all marketers are liars just as not selling. And yet the original title was maybe more all marketers are not liars, to be fair. But he was trying to make the point that we are offering a representation of reality that is not going to be 100% accurate.
Yeah.
And we have an opinion. We have a bias. Everybody does. So this idea that if we can think all deadlines are lies, now, caveat, we might not all be at the level in the organization where we could slam our fist on the table and say this in a boardroom. Damn it, boss. That deadline is a lie. But the idea that all deadlines are a negotiation, that feels a little more malleable, something I can maybe sink my teeth into.
Yeah. Let's imagine this for a moment. We have to get this show on the road. We have to get this out for everybody. It's got to be out this afternoon.
Let's do it.
Is that reasonable? You got 20 minutes.
No.
Okay.
Not reasonable.
Awesome. Cool. One more step. Just say what's a more reasonable timeline, and then we've negotiated it, right?
I could do this. I normally do this in 7 days. If you really need it, I can do it in 3 days.
Amazing. And what's going to be the cost for doing it in 3 days?
Oh, thank you. It means I'll have to leave my kids at school while I work through the night. So they're not going to be very happy with me and might call Child Protection Services. But it's all about the business though, Nicholas. I'm a team player.
Oh, no. See, perfect move. Amazing. Now you're tugging on my heartstrings and it's like, oh, I'm not a monster. Like, okay, fine. A week it is. I mean, it's the same thing with data, right?
Yeah.
We're all engineers. I assume we're not writing DBT models, we're flying a plane or operating on a person. So odds are, if someone says this needs to be done by this date, we can say, hey, this is not reasonable. I'm not going to sacrifice my personal life for this because, I have to sleep. I'm a human being. So here's a reasonable amount of time. This is why it's going to take this amount of time. I can do it in a little bit less, but it's going to cost this, where this might be other projects, other priorities, other people. And then you can come to a negotiation and figure out what a more reasonable deadline will be.
Man, I like that a lot. And I feel like it's something that professionals ought to practice. Again, we have to acknowledge some people may fear for their jobs. I get that. That's real. Some people may not yet feel confident enough to broach that conversation. That's real. Also, Nicholas, you've maybe been naturally blessed with, what did you call it? Like unearned confidence?
Unearned confidence. Absolutely.
You may have been blessed with that, which, by the way, is an asset in most situations. But as a manager, I'm guessing that you've had people on your team who maybe have different personality strengths. And I'm curious as to how you might coach or mentor them to even have these sorts of conversations with you. You might be imposing deadlines upon them, not knowing those deadlines are unrealistic for them. How do you coach an introverted person to have this conversation?
Yeah, I really believe that there's a powerful, profound value to be had if we're able to inspire folks to be leaders of their domain. I'm going to use my team as an example. So within my team, everyone is the leader of their work. They own their work. They are responsible for its ability. They're responsible for talking to me about what their project plans are or what they intend to do. I don't command them. It's not my job to say, you have to work on this model and update the docs. No, they are specifically expected to come to me and say, hey, here's the plan. We're going to build X, remove Y, refine Z. Here's a refactor we're going to do. And I can say, very well, awesome, let's do it. And the way that I'm able to build up a team to do this is by saying, hey, I'm going to work with you to make sure that I understand your role, make sure I understand what's important to you, and I'm going to also work with you to make sure that you understand what's important to the business, make sure that you understand what's important to our stakeholders. And from that, everyone involved starts to have this sense of intrinsic motivation that like, hey, I'm building something. I am contributing. I'm having a positive impact or a negative impact on the people whom I'm supporting.
Yes.
What can I do to make their life easier, to make their life better, to give them a capability they've never had before? Cool. Well, now that I'm in this mindset of like, all right, I am the leader of my own ship. I am responsible for these particular folks or this particular part of the company. What would I do? All right, I'm going to do this. Hey, Nick, here's my plan. That's how it starts. And then once people start to feel this ownership, they start to feel this sense of empowerment about how they are leading their own work and how they interact with others, then it's really easy for them to say like, hey, actually, no, I can't do this. And then it's really great because then I don't have to be making bad decisions, right? Like we can come to a better understanding.
Right. Oh, this is good, man. This is good. Folks, you guys didn't know you were going to be getting this breadth of education today. We've gone from biochemistry to physics to philosophy to
anthropology to leadership management, right?
That's right. That's right. And yeah, way before you're managing a team, you are managing your own career. So yeah, this is really valuable what you're sharing here. We're coming close to the top of the hour. So I gotta wrap this up, unfortunately. It's been so much fun hanging out with Nicholas, but I'd love to ask a couple more questions about your data aspirations, if I may. It's been a wild ride so far, but if we look forward 5 years, 5 to 10 years, where do you see yourself career-wise?
But definitely swinging from building to building on webs. Maybe a little bit of vigilante justice. Like, that's my goal, though.
That's my bad. That's my bad. I walked right into that. The myth of the objective. You can't fly in a straight line.
Right, I gotta go between the buildings.
Let me rephrase the question though. What sorts of experiences or skills would you find interesting to collect along the way? Not knowing where you might end up in 5 years. What would be interesting to you in the next couple of years?
That's such a more interesting question, because now it's like, what are the experiences I want to have? Okay. Here's what I'm thinking. I would love to keep building really interesting tools. So I've been absolutely delighted in working with Grace Goheen and Dave Connors on the DPT Meshify package. I've been working with my team internally on a boatload of truly revolutionary technologies that kind of couple analytics engineering, AI, and the developer experience. I can't really talk about those too much, but they're really fantastic. And as we kind of move towards the future, I want to have more of those experiences where I'm building useful tools that actually make engineers' lives easier, that keep people in their sense of flow, that keep them in their sense of workflow, and make it so that everyone has this sense of delight of like, cool, I'm going to make this model. I'm going to be very clear about what I need to do. I can be confident that I'm doing it right. And it's not going to be painful at any point along the way. Like those are my big goals there. So that's on the tooling side. And on the other side, I would absolutely love to continue my sort of disjointed pendulum arc of roles. And I really am looking forward to getting back into like an IC role again. Definitely not in the short term. Probably give it a few years. But I know that I love being an IC almost as much as I like being a manager. And being back in that position, working with teams, inspiring and mentoring folks. While also not being responsible for performance reviews will be great for a future Nick down the line.
Oh man, how fascinating. A lot of us do think of our careers in this linear sort of framework. And yet I could imagine some of the benefits of taking this pendulum approach where you, just for example, not speaking of Nicholas in particular, but speaking of, an individual, they jump into leadership or they earn a leadership position. They learn how to mentor, how to inspire, how to scale. And then they go back into IC work, learn some of the current technologies, sharpen their skills, get reinvigorated to do more leadership work at the next stop. That sounds like a fun sort of career path.
Oh, absolutely. So that's why it's something that I've been entertained with. But I really am looking forward to the next move whenever that happens down the line.
Man, this is great. Good stuff. Folks, you've been talking to Nicholas Yager. Most deadlines are lies, but don't tell your boss that. Instead, try to make it a negotiation. We're talking to a data leader who wants to build tools that make data engineering delightful. Nicholas, you've been super generous with your time. Thank you for coming on to the show. Folks, we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now. This show is brought to you by DBT. DBT is the industry standard for data transformation. It allows your team to prepare data for analysis in a way that's centralized, modular, and entirely open, all inside your cloud data platform. The outcome? Consistently dependable analytics for your organization. Now, the DBT community was built for and by data pros. Come hang out and transform with 70,000 of the brightest analytics engineers, data analysts, and data scientists in the world. With DBT, you transform your data. With the DBT community, you transform your data career.